Yeah, breaking news right now. Just minutes ago, the United States Supreme Court sided with Donald Trump and ruled that the Trump administration does not have to pay out full SNAP benefits for the month of November, at least for now. A major win for the Trump administration. Just 2 hours after the Trump Department of Justice filed an emergency appeal with this United States Supreme Court, urging the court to act before 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and the court acted as the clock struck 9:30 to block the Trump administration from having to send millions of Americans SNAP benefits. This late night decision comes on a Friday night, comes just hours after the Trump administration said publicly that it would hand over essentially money to SNAP, fully fund SNAP benefits. And yet at the same time, Donald Trump and his Department of Justice have been filing emergency appeal after emergency appeal in an effort to try to get the courts to essentially put a pause on this, to say we don't have to pay out SNAP benefits, and they just got their ruling. So let me break it down because it's an important ruling. It's not a final ruling. So tonight, the Supreme Court temporarily froze a federal district judge's order requiring the Trump administration to deliver full SNAP payments to 42 million Americans by the end of the day tonight. The ruling landed just hours after a federal appeals court in Boston. Essentially, there was major legal whiplash over what was happening, and it's created a swirl of uncertainty around one of the country's most essential safety net programs. And the critical issue here is whether the administration must honor the obligation to distribute November benefits under SNAP, even as the federal government remains shuttered. The Supreme Court's decision was short. It did not really clarify what it means for families that rely on SNAP. So let me read you the order. The applicants are seeking a stay of two orders of the United States District Court of the District of Rhode Island. These orders required the applicants to fully fund benefits for the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program for the month of November and to distribute that funding by the end of the day on November 7, 2025, today. Earlier today, the applicants asked the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit to stay the district court's order pending appeal and to issue an administrative stay to facilitate its consideration of that stay. At 6:08 p.m., the First Circuit denied that applicant's request for an administrative stay, but stated that it intends to issue a decision unless essentially soon thereafter. So earlier today, the First Circuit Court of Appeals said you're not going to get your administrative stay that you've been wanting. You're not going to get a stay of Judge McConnell's decision. Because if you recall earlier this week, Judge John McConnell, a district judge in Rhode Island, said, Donald Trump, you have to pay out SNAP benefits. And then they came back to court and he said, Donald Trump, you're not paying out SNAP benefits. You violated my court order. You have to do it. And that set off a flurry of anxiety within the Trump administration because they didn't want to pay it out. And so today they filed an emergency appeal to the First Circuit Court of Appeals and said, judges, we need what is called an administrative stay. Has nothing to do with the merits of the case. It essentially gives the administration more time. The judges on the First Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, you're not getting an administrative stay, but we do intend to issue a decision soon on whether or not, on the merits of whether or not Judge McConnell's order should be upheld. So Trump said, you know what, screw the First Circuit. We're going to go to the Supreme Court. They're not going to give us an emergency stay. We're going to go directly to the Supreme Court. And tonight the Supreme Court said, and Trump asked the Supreme Court to issue an order by 9:30 Eastern Time. And minutes before that deadline, the Supreme Court said, we're going to put a pause on Judge McConnell's order requiring you to pay out full SNAP benefits. We're going to give the First Circuit Court of Appeals deference. We're going to give the First Circuit some time, essentially, to decide whether or not to uphold Judge McConnell's decision. So it's administrative stay. So it's not a decision on the merits. That's the key caveat here. The Supreme Court's not saying that Trump's refusal to pay out SNAP benefits is constitutional or unconstitutional. The justices are not weighing anything considering the merits. And it's interesting, the order that was issued tonight was actually issued by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's not issued by another justice, and that's because Justice Jackson oversees the circuit. So it's not surprising that she would be the one that signs the order. But it's not a situation where you have the Supreme Court saying, no, Judge McConnell's ruling is wrong. That's not what the Supreme Court said tonight. The Supreme Court said, no, 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 we just can't rule on something, or we can't allow this ruling to go into effect before the First Circuit acts. And so we're going to give the First Circuit some more time. And until the First Circuit acts, which could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be next week, we're going to stay Judge McConnell's decision, because theoretically there is a scenario where the First Circuit Court of Appeals comes back and says, you know what? We don't think that Judge McConnell was right in his analysis. We think that the Trump administration can legally withhold funds. The USDA does not have to pay out these funds. And, well, I don't think that's what would happen, but theoretically, anything is possible, right? And so we're in a situation where the Supreme Court's like, we're just going to keep the status quo. We're not going to force Trump to pay out any SNAP benefits. We're not going to force anything to happen. We're just going to keep it as is. But here's the issue with all of that. The status quo is that 42 million Americans, families across the country, are not getting critical food assistance. That's the status quo. The status quo means that many Americans may soon run out of food assistance, may soon run out of SNAP and EBT. Now, the one silver lining in all of this is that actually a lot of families today received some sort of SNAP payments. They received some sort of money on their cards. I've heard from folks in California, folks in New York, and other states across the country who have said to me, told me today actually, that they were able to use SNAP and EBT because the Trump administration kind of opened that up, opened the door, at least a little bit. So that's a good thing. But at the same time, you now have a situation where the future for a lot of these families is once again uncertain. Now, all of this can be solved pretty easily. The government can be reopened tomorrow, tonight, right now, 5 minutes from now, if members of Congress came together and figured it out. But they haven't been able to do that. And so you're in a situation now where members of Congress are not acting, the Supreme Court not acting. And I will say another part of all of this that not many people are talking about. The Trump administration has fought so hard to deprive these families of SNAP benefits. I've never seen an administration fight this hard over a court ruling. Truly never seen it before. They have desperately, desperately tried to prevent these families across America from receiving critical SNAP benefits at a time where they need it most. And that is a conversation that we need to have. Why? Why is this administration doing it? Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Spread the word. I'm getting this to you first, and I'll see you soon. Make sure to subscribe to support my work. I'll have more soon.